Jonathan, a millionaire haunted by a father's fierce instincts, installed discreet security cameras throughout his sprawling home. This wasn't paranoia about his wealth, but a deep-seated fear for his son. 3 years earlier, a reckless driver had shattered not only 12-year-old Lucas's spine, but also the fragile world. Jonathan thought money could protect. Lucas was paralyzed from the waist down. Since that day, the mansion had become a revolving door of doctors, therapists, and staff. Some were akin, others careless, many just there for the paycheck. Jonathan had learned the hard way that not everyone treated a vulnerable child with the dignity he deserved. A raised voice caught by accident, a rough tug on a wheelchair each incident, chipped away at his trust. So, he hid tiny, silent cameras in corners, lamps, and shelves, telling himself it was only to keep Lucas safe. But Jonathan rarely watched the feeds anymore. Seeing his son's daily struggle through a lens felt like reopening a wound. When the previous maid quit abruptly, citing emotional exhaustion, Jonathan hired Elena without much thought. Her resume was plain, her references sincere but brief. She didn't flatter him or stare at the marble floors in awe. During the interview, she asked only one question. Does Lucas like music? Jonathan barely registered it at the time. The first week passed uneventfully. The house was spotless, the meals simple, and Lucas's schedule followed precisely. Buried in meetings, Jonathan hardly crossed paths with her. But Lucas was different. The boy who once answered questions with shrugs started lingering in the kitchen when Elena hummed while cooking. His eyes followed her with a curiosity Jonathan hadn't seen in years. One evening, returning home early and restless, Jonathan decided to open the camera feeds. He expected nothing, which is perhaps why what he saw unsettled him so deeply. On this screen, Elena sat on the floor beside Lucas's wheelchair. She wasn't speaking, not doing therapy, not even touching him. She was simply there, matching her breathing to his, eyes closed. After a long moment, she whispered something Jonathan couldn't quite hear. Lucas's shoulders, usually tense, slowly relaxed. Jonathan leaned closer to the monitor. Elena began tapping softly on the floor, a gentle rhythm, then handed Lucas 2 wooden spoons. The boy hesitated, then tapped them together. Elena smiled a encouraging smile and began tapping back. A rhythm formed, clumsy at first, then steady. And then, a sound Jonathan realized he hadn't heard freely in months. Lucas laughed. Jonathan Frose. This wasn't in any care manual. It wasn't therapy or routine. It was connection. The next feed showed Elena adjusting Lucas's blanket later that night, speaking to him not as a patient, but as an equal. You don't have to be brave all the time, she said softly. You can be tired. I'll stay. A tightness seized Jonathan's chest. Over the next few days, he watched more, always on scene. He saw Elena read adventure novels to Lucas, pausing to ask his opinion on the hero's choices. He saw her guide him through exercises long after the physical therapist had left, turning each movement into a game that celebrated effort, not just success. Then came the moment that shattered Jonathan's world. Late one night, the living room camera captured Lucas in tears, his fists clenched with frustration. I hate this chair, he sobbed. I hate being stuck. Jonathan's instinct was to rush downstairs, but something held him back. Elena knelt in front of Lucas, her face leveled with his. She didn't offer hollow reassurance. She simply said, I know. Then she did something Jonathan never expected. She placed Lucas's hands on her own legs. Tell me what you miss, she urged. Running, he whispered. Elena nodded, gently moving his hands to her knees as she shifted her weight. Then, feel this, she said. This is movement. Different doesn't mean gone. She described every step she took as she walked slowly in place, narrating the sensation, inviting him into it. Lucas listened, his breathing slowing. When she finished, she said, Your body remembers. We'll remind it together. Tears blurred the screen. In that moment, Jonathan understood something painful and humbling. All his money, his vigilance, his hidden cameras had protected Lucas from physical harm, but none of it had given him hope. Elena did that, without ever knowing she was being watched. The next morning, Jonathan called Elena into his office. She stood calmly, expecting criticism. He struggled to speak, then confessed about the cameras. Not defensively, but with shame. He told her what he had seen. Elena listened, her gaze steady, and said quietly, "I'm glad you saw the real him." Jonathan offered her a raise, a contract, anything she wanted. Elena just shook her head. "Just let me keep helping him," she said. "Not as a job, as a promise." From that day on, the cameras stayed, but Jonathan no longer watched out of fear. He watched to learn. Lucas began his therapy with a new determination, not because he expected to walk tomorrow, but because he believed he was more than what he had lost. The mansion changed. Laughter echoed where silence once lived, and Jonathan, the man who thought control was protection, learned that the greatest safety comes from trust. If this story moved you, if you believe that true compassion can be found where we least expect it, please subscribe to our channel. Stories like this remind us that humanity is the greatest wealth of all. Thanks for watching.